Alrighty, hello everyone. Welcome to our fifth installment of the podcast. Today, Ciara and I will be reflecting a little bit back on high school. Last week, we talked to Hediye about her experience with the transition and what she's hopeful for her second year. But we kind of thought we wanted to take a bit of time to talk about our experience and like frame it in how we're feeling, 3 to 5 years later after high school and thinking about, oh, what that lens of like, oh, thinking back, what do those experiences mean to us now? Um, and kind of what we're experiencing as we're, parallel, adjacently. I'm not really sure what the right word I'm trying to go for here is, but this idea of like, you know, transitioning out of high school and now the two of us are transitioning out of university. So that's kind of what we're going for today. Kiara, do you want to share a little bit about your final year of high school?
Yeah, my final year of high school was it feels like a really long time ago, even though it was only like 4 years ago, but it was, it was 2017, which, you know, feels like so long ago. But I went to an arts high school. And so, because I was like in a like special art program, it wasn't like special, but it was like separate from like the just not art stream at the school. We had a separate graduation called That's a Wrap because the program was called the Wrap program. It was like the regional arts program. And so we got to have like this kind of nice, like tight knit graduation with just our the graduating class from like each of the five disciplines, and before having like the big graduation with like the like 400 kids that graduated from my entire high school. So that was like something that was really special for me. And also like my art class was 20, 25, 26 people that like I had class with them every day for 4 years. So it was just like a really like nice end to things. And yeah, it was really like bittersweet to go because, you spend 4 years with someone every day. You kind of build an attachment to them. But now some of us are still friends, and like it's nice to see what everyone's doing. Most of my like graduating class did not pursue a career in art, but most of them went on to like do like sciencey things. So it's always interesting to see like where people are at now and stuff like that. But yeah, ending high school was like a little bittersweet, but it was fun. And like I was very grateful for like the kind of personal touch that I had to the end of the year through my like art program. And now I'm graduating university, which is a weird thought. How was your high school graduation, Cianna?
I actually think it's funny to hear that you had such a close-knit community in your high school because you were in the regional art program, because I think we've talked about the sizes of our schools before, and I felt like yours is bigger than mine. Mine is tiny, but bigger than mine. I know that there are other schools that are 4,000 students, like public schools in the States, 4,000 students, and mine is like so tiny compared to that. But I actually think our experience is like maybe a little bit like on paper sounds a little bit similar because I went to an all girls school in Philadelphia, and so there's less than 400 students in the entire school, and in my class alone there were only 74 students.
Wow.
um but similarly to you, Kiara, I think I took pretty like specialized seems like such a special word, but like I took like advanced stream classes from grade 9, and so I was in classes with the same exact girls, basically the same girls who place well on the entrance exam. They get placed into a certain class, and it was kind of like across the board. So similarly, I kind of spent every day with the same people. And my good friend Gina, in our grade 11 year, I think we had every single class together. Like we would just walk the
Wow.
halls together. Um, so yes, I agree. And since our class is so small, I think Like similarly, our graduation is really like close knit and cute. And I was even like looking back at the photos the other day because Kiara and I were doing something where we required old photos, and I was trying to find like an old photo of one of my good friends from graduation. And yes, I don't know where I was going with that. Honestly, I think my biggest memory from my graduation is I wore shoes that I should not have worn because I don't know what I thought. We had like now I'm going off on a tangent, but the bottom line is that we had to wear nude or white shoes. It was mandatory because they wanted us all to look really nice because our graduation gowns were white. So we had to wear a white dress and nude shoes or white shoes so that like we all just look really crisp in the group photos. And I like bought new shoes, and in the store they were painful. And I thought to myself, I'm not gonna break them in. I'm gonna break them in. False, so false. Never do that. Never do that. If you are a girl, if you're a boy, if it's not comfortable in the store, do not buy it. Don't buy it. You will not break it in. You will not break it in within like 3 days of your graduation. Don't do it. Anyways, um, but something that I've been thinking about, oh my God, last funny story. So my friend Jane, she went back to my school like a few years ago, and she took a picture with a picture that they have framed on the wall, and it's like the cutest photo of me and Jane. They had it like really, they had it printed on a canvas, so
Mm.
it's like a canvas, but it's a photo, and Jane is like up against the wall, like pointing to it in a really like dramatic fashion. Um, and I told her, I was like, go ask Mrs. Quinn, who is our vice principal. I was like, go ask Mrs. Quinn if I can have it. Tell her to mail it to me. Anyways, last funny story. And but one thing that I was thinking about, like literally in the thought of like Jane, is that some of my high school friends, I was even thinking about it this week. I think I only really keep up with one of my friends from high school, like consistently, like we talk, you know, often. Um, and even then, like it's not that I don't think I'm still friends with my other friends. Like if they were to call me, I'd be so happy to talk to them. Like if they were to set something up, would be really happy to go. But I think a combination of me not being in Philadelphia anymore, and the fact that like now we're all in university, we're like bombarded with other like stimuli, our classes, our clubs, our the new people that we've met. I do feel that they're not as like closely linked to my life anymore. And I think, coming out of university and in second year, I was feeling that a lot. That I was like, oh no, is this like, does that mean I'm like losing them as friends? But like now that I'm in my fourth year, I have this feeling of like, no, like we're still friends. We're just like, maybe not as like it's just not the same anymore. But I think that's just like a changing of our dynamic and not a changing of this feeling of friendship.
Yeah, definitely. I think like that story reminds me of like my like one best friend from high school. I still consider her my best friend to this day. But how often do we talk? Not that often. But we both still consider each other our like best friends. Like we had like a lot of like milestones together. We like when we graduated at our high or like in the art program, we like went on a trip every year. And then for our graduating year, the trip got canceled because like the typical demographic ended up going like a year earlier or something. So we were like, what are we gonna do? And then she ended up coming with me and her ended up going on a trip to Italy with like my dad's school. It was kind of like a funny thing. It was like all these kids from my dad's school, me, my best friend Julia, and then my middle sister Bianca. And we were just kind of like, hey guys, like what's good?
So scary.
Yeah.
Delivering.
So like we have all these like really nice memories together, and she ended up going to Guelph, and obviously I went to U of T, and so we weren't like near each other anymore. But like I've gone when I was in first year, I like went up to Guelph to like go visit her and like stayed with her in her residence for like 2 days, and then like whenever she comes home, we always do something together. But like I think it's like changed my perspective of like what I think of like as a best friend. Like it's not necessarily like someone that you like see every day or talk to every day and like, you know, you have all these like inside jokes and stuff like that. Like we have inside jokes, but like they're kind of old. They're a bit dated, the inside jokes. But like even though I don't see her every day or talk to her every day, like if I'm ever like, oh, this reminds me of Julia, I'll like send it to her, or like sometimes like we just call each other out of the blue and we're like, how are you doing? Like, what are you up to? And like that's something that like I really value and appreciate. And we also always go to like our family like birthday parties. So like I'll always go to like her family birthday parties and she'll come to like mine. And like so our families like all know each other and stuff like that. And so like that's something that I really value. But I think it like going into university, it's like changed my perspective of like what a like best friend looks like or is supposed to look like. And
Hmm.
like my brain maturing and evolving. But like, yeah.
I love that. I was calling Abigail 2 weeks ago and she made me feel old. So I want to make you feel old now.
Oh
You know that
no.
you entered grade 9 8 years ago.
Oh my
So
god.
like, yeah, that's what Abigail and I were chatting about for like, I don't know, 10 minutes, whatever, is the idea that, end of high school was not that long ago. It was only 4 years ago, but like being in high school, ooh, it feels a bit longer because it's like
Yeah.
you can say 8 years ago or like 7 years ago. I feel
Oh
like
my
8 or 7 years ago seems like a long time ago. Anyways,
Yeah.
all of that to say is I totally agree with you. And like I'm also the kind of person who like in high school in the summer I wouldn't really hang out with my friends a lot. And so like this idea of I'm not really good at like messaging out of the blue. I'm not really good at like calling out of the blue. I'm like the kind of person who like, oh, I see you, we talk, get excited, or like we plan to get together and then we talk and we get excited. But I'm not like a like out of the blue because I feel I don't know, and this is just my personal opinion. It's my personal opinion. It is not what I'm telling anyone to do because I like when people message me out of the blue. But like when I go to message someone out of the blue, I feel insecure. I'm like, am I bothering them? But that's my own insecurity. That's not reality. I recognize it's my own
I feel the same.
insecurity.
I feel the same way. Sometimes I'll be like, no, you just gotta like overcome it. Because then I see things online and it's like, funny how like when I stop reaching out, like no one talks to me, and then I'm like, am I becoming that person? Am I not reaching out to people enough? And then I'm like, hey, how's it going? How's life? That was me at the beginning of the pandemic, panicking because I didn't see people in the coop. Maybe they'd forget about me.
Yeah, so I think I'm someone who's insecure about reaching out, but someone who's really secure. Like I think that in the sense that like I don't think that I need to talk to someone all the time to be friends with them. And I think that's something that similarly to Kiara, like I've been feeling like in my third year, like now, after like getting over that, like, oh my gosh, my high school friends, I don't talk to them as much. And now I'm like, you know what? It's all good. Like even my friend Sylvan, I don't think I talked to her that much like in second year. I didn't talk to her that much during the year, but then like we kind of like reconnected now. And Sylvan has been through like the things with me. And so all of that to say is like I think the things that keep you bonded together aren't just like, oh, every like these small everyday things. I think it can begin with that. And then, you experience things together and then they stay with you. And I think like we're also feeling that now as like university is ending. And one of my good friends even was telling me how he's not moving back on res. And I think like him telling me that just like really hit home that like things are changing now. Like this is a transition into out of university and everyone is going to be taking on their new chapter, and some of our chapters might not be the same. But to say that, yeah, I'm excited excited about the next steps, but also I'm gonna miss seeing everyone every day.
Yeah, and I think like going to U of T, like there's so many, like, you meet so many amazing people that come from like all over the world. And so like that's something that I'm like, oh my gosh, my friends are gonna like move away and then I'll have to like
Mhm.
take a plane to see them. I won't be able to just like walk down the street anymore. And so like
Mhm.
thinking like, oh, maintaining friendships while someone's abroad in the friendship, like that's an interesting thing to like navigate and think about. And like for me, I was like, oh, maybe the pandemic's like a practice run for me. Like I don't see everyone every day. Everyone's all over the place. Like I can still maintain these friendships. I just gotta like, every so often like shoot them a message or have them shoot me a message. And like I'm optimistic that it's doable. But like realistically, you know, sometimes friendships end and like that's okay. And I think like moving in like to your later 20s and like graduating as time goes on, kind of like your friend group becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. And it's not because like we both said, you're not friends with those people anymore. You're still friends with them, you think fondly of them, you have like nice memories of them, but like you're kind of, you might be in different stages in your life, or you might not be like kind of in the same like environment as you used to be, and so maybe like things change, but I think that's okay.
I agree. That's like so funny that we're doing this podcast today because even my dad was telling me about that yesterday when I was calling him. I was talking to him about like, oh, how I'm feeling. I'm feeling like things are changing now. And my dad was like, yeah, like that's essentially he's like, that's what happens. He's like, after university, or if you move, because my family's moved several times, like he's like, when we moved away from Vancouver, when we moved to Vancouver, I got all new friends. And then he's like, when I moved away from Vancouver, I got all new friends and I didn't really keep up with those old friends. And he's like at the same time, like there are friends in Vancouver that I know I could call them at any time for their advice and like, you know, they would be there for me, but we're just not like that everyday, like right next to you, shoulder to shoulder anymore, but that they're still like supporting you. And this idea of like, even when you're not next to someone, you can feel them like cheering for you or they're on your side, regardless of your location.
That's so true. That's actually so funny that like your dad kind of like you and your dad had that conversation recently. My my dad recently,
Mr. Perry.
so my dad like grew up in like a small town in like Ontario, and recently one of his friends from like high school that he played basketball with called our house phone and like was like, hey, my dad's nickname in high school was like P Dog, and so he was like, hey P
Mr.
like, what's
Perry.
up? And so apparently this like guy had like ran, I don't know if he like ran into my grandma or like my uncle that like still live in this town, and they were like, oh, what's like Dave's number? And so they like gave it to him, and then he like called their house phone. My dad and him had this like really nice like long conversation. And so like next, like once safe to travel and stuff, we're gonna go visit my grandma, and also go and see this man that my dad hasn't seen in a while.
Oh my God, that's so funny. That's so funny. I think it's so funny that your dad is called P Dog. I think your dad is such a wholesome guy.
Yeah.
So funny.
You saw my dad in high school. He does not look like a P Dog. This man was like 6 feet, lanky as heck.
I feel like that sounds to me, my image of your dad, it sounds on brand for your dad though. Not
Yeah.
the not the P Dog thing, but that was totally not on brand. I was like, oh, okay, Mr. Barry. But I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, I don't know where that I was going with that story, but like I think like, reaching out to people after, maybe you've moved on where you were like at the time of your initial friendship. That's something I'm looking forward to. I'm optimistic too.
I think it can go like so many different ways. Even your comment about like moving to different places. My cousin is getting married this year, and she's having a really small wedding. But similarly, me and my other cousin were talking about the wedding and talking about like, oh, if we were ever to get married, like who would be on the guest list? Like if we had to have a tiny wedding like her, who would it be that we had to invite? And we were talking about like how weddings are also kind of like the time where if you're going to try to bring everyone together, all the people that are abroad, like a wedding is kind of like the time to do it. And at the same time, my cousin was a little bit pessimistic. She was like, "Oh, but you don't know, like if someone's super far away and they have their kids and all these things, like they might not, um, they might not be able to come." And I said, like, "No, I don't think so." When I was 6 years old, I went to a wedding in Japan for my parents' university friend, and they brought me, they brought my little brother. We all shipped out to Japan and went to this wedding. So I think like you can make time and your friends will be there for you and your family will be there for you. Um, so yeah, that's that's my little piece on that. I just think
So
like
true, so true.
I know, I know. I was like, anyways, I'll just say I have a brother who's like also 4 years younger than me. So I feel like he's like, you know, like 4 years is like this like high school, it's university. And so he's moving like this way, like with me forward. And I just realized that like there are other high school students that are younger than my brother because he's now turning 17. And I was like in shock. I was in shock that my little tiny baby brother has people who are like younger than him, but in high school. And like in my mind, like when you get to high school, like that's when you like are beginning that like mature, like you're beginning to mature more. You're not just like frivolously like hanging out, like you're, you know, getting ready. And I'm like, oh my gosh, my little brother, he's moving on. He's growing up so fast.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat with like both my sisters. Like my middle sister started university this year. My youngest sister is the same age as your brother, so going into grade 12 next year. And it's like it's kind of like bittersweet because I'm like, oh, they're no longer small, they're growing up. But like at the same time, I like love seeing them like grow up and mature and become their own like individual people. Like my middle sister, I'm like so proud of like the personal growth she's gone through and like kind of the person that she's become now. And like my youngest sister, like is so smart. She like her grades. Oh, and I'm like so happy that she's like, you know, really coming to her own like in high school and like kind of established, like got her footing with like her academics. So like even though it's kind of bittersweet because like they're growing up, but I'm so proud of like the people they're growing up into.
Oh my god, so cute. I know that you have to go, Kiara. Maybe we should do a whole nother segment on our siblings because like similarly, I feel like my brother is like I tutor kids. That's why I suddenly felt like, oh my god, my brother's so old. So I like tutor high school kids too, and one of them was asking me for advice on advanced placement AP world history. And my brother took that class and I asked him for his advice. And he sent me like paragraphs of like solid advice. And I was like, since when can my brother give advice to students younger than him? Like when did this happen? When did this happen? So similarly, yeah, I think it's kind of funny how everything is moving forward.
Yeah.
Alrighty, I think that's where we'll wrap up today's episode. Thank you so much to everyone who's joining us. Thank you, Kieta. Um, yes. Well, have a wonderful rest of your day, your evening. It doesn't matter what time you're listening, watching, reading this. Have a good one, everyone.
Bye everyone. Thanks for listening.